Hello and welcome back to FPL Graduates. We're going to be taking a look at the best Game Week 2 transfer targets. It's no Ben this time, it's me and FPL Akshay. How you doing, mate?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me on your channel.
No worries, mate. Thank you for coming on. As I said, transfer targets this week. How did you get on in Game Week 1? Is there any quick amendments that you're going to need to do for this week?
Well, I got 78 points. It wasn't too bad, but I'm just a little bit worried about the Gabriel situation at the moment. So I'm just waiting to see if he gets a price drop or not. So yeah.
Awesome. Right, let's get straight into it. Okay, so first up, we've got Destiny UDOGIE. No one really knows how to pronounce it, I'm not sure just yet. But he played quite well in the first game, and I was banging on about him in pre-season with the heat maps. He plays quite high up. Obviously, Spurs are playing in that inverted fullback sort of system. We've seen with Emerson Royale on the other side. What did you think of Spurs in general and sort of how they played and maybe their defence as well?
Well, it was a very end-to-end game. I watched the game, but their defense hasn't convinced me enough yet. I like obviously the look of Madison and stuff like that a lot, but I wouldn't really be targeting their defenders initially. I think there's especially a lot better 4.5 mil options, but after game week 3, it does look nice with 3 good fixtures in a row. But yeah, I'll probably be targeting someone like Rico Henry if it's the 4.5 mil bracket.
Yeah, definitely a safer pick. I know that Ben, he went for Rico Henry when he heard about the John Stones news. You obviously know what's coming there. It was interesting seeing him play really high up in that five back as well because they were facing Spurs. They tend to do
Yeah.
that against the better teams in the league. With UDOGIE, though, obviously those fixtures is what screams out. The Bournemouth away, Burnley away, Sheffield United at home. 3 decent fixtures, 2 against relatively good offensive sides, though, with Bournemouth and Burnley. So not necessarily the greenest of fixtures for the defence anyway. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that defence does going forward. Now they've signed Mickey van der Ven. It
Yeah.
looks a lot better on paper, I must say, than what it did last season with Eric Dyer. So, yeah, we'll see how that gets on with the Spurs team. Moving on next, we've got Ben Chilwell. Obviously, he started unbelievable in game week 1 against Liverpool, grabbing that assist, had an offside goal, probably could have scored as well. What was your thoughts on him?
He was giving me a heart attack every 5 minutes because I don't personally own Chilwell, but yeah, he was outstanding. So he was basically playing left wing most of the game. But yeah, I'm really happy that that goal didn't count. But he's an absolute essential, especially if you can afford him. I personally, at the moment, can't. I can only afford him if I take out Shaw. But yeah, a must-have because he's just scary if you don't own him.
Yeah, and since these graphics have been made, he's now risen in price as well to
Yeah,
5.6 million today. So yeah, he becomes quite unaffordable for a lot of managers. I imagine the easiest move would be like Luke Shaw to Chilwell for a lot of managers if they have him. But no one really owns a £6 million defender, so that sort of
yeah.
template already is sort of shifting if they don't own Chilwell. And like you said, he was so offensive with those fixtures coming up. It'll be interesting to see if he continues that. What did you think? Do you reckon Chelsea's defence? Would you be interested in maybe like a cheaper option there? Like obviously Reece James hasn't risen in price, so that sort of differentiates those two already. Is there anyone else in that Chelsea defence you think is good?
Yeah, so out of the other Chelsea defenders, Disasi sparks for me as well. Obviously, he scored on his debut. But if I were to get one, it would be out of Chilwell or Reece James because we know how explosive they both are. But yeah, they do have some really nice cheap options as well. But the problem with Chilwell and Reece James is you never know when they're going to get injured because half the time they're always injured. That's the only one thing. But both of them, I think, are the two main guys to go for in the Chelsea defence.
Okay, so we're going to move up into midfield now, and you already mentioned this man talking about Spurs earlier. He had an unbelievable debut for Spurs, got 2 assists, overall really dangerous to set pieces. Like for the first goal, for example, when he whipped that in, literally anyone could have touched that, and it's a goal. It was an absolutely superb piece of play from him. I think he's what Spurs have been missing for quite a few years now, maybe since Ericsson
Yeah.
sort of left the club. So, what was your thoughts on Madison's debut, and do you think he's like the most like must-own Spurs attacker at the moment?
Yeah, 100%. I went with him in my own team to start the season with because I did a lot of videos and a lot of like analysis on him when he was at Leicester, and he was literally playing for a relegation side, and he still outperformed a lot of stats when you compare all the other relegation players in that type of position. And yeah, like what you said, he was literally the person Spurs needed and were missing. And he had a great debut, 2 assists. Although the second assist was a bit dodgy, it probably shouldn't have counted, but I'm happy with it. Um, yeah, out of all the Spurs assets, he is the standout must own for me, 100%.
Yeah, and going on touching on a few of those other assets, obviously there's Son, Kulusevski and Richarlison was that sort of front four that Postecoglou played. With there obviously a lot of talk going into pre-season, like Richarlison as the £7 million out of position, didn't really get a lot of chances because Brentford was so decent defensively. The goals that Spurs scored was from a set piece and then from an outside the box shot, low XG chance. So do you think going forward, maybe against United, against Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United, that Richarlison becomes better because he's going to get more chances in those sort of fixtures?
Yeah, definitely. And like it will take some time for them to click as well. They're brand new playing together. And the amount of chances Maddison creates in a game anyway, Richarlison's obviously bound to get on the end of some of them. So both of them are good options. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and would you like look at doubling up on those? Say like come game week three really good fixtures. Would you make the most out of that, or would you sort of hedge your bets a little bit, see how they do, maybe against United, a different type of defense, and then go from there?
I probably wouldn't double up on Tottenham's midfield at the moment, although obviously we know Richarlison basically plays up front, because the rest of them need to prove something to me first. Maddison's always been quite a reliable FPL asset, but Richarlison is the first time he's playing up front in a secure run of fixtures for Spurs. Obviously now Kane's not there, so yeah, they're gonna have to prove something to me before I move on the rest of them.
Okay, so up next we've got Diogo Jota. Obviously, Liverpool have that big game week 2 fixture against Bournemouth. A lot of people who went with Mo Salah will be looking to captain him against them. For a little cheaper alternative at £8 million, Diogo Jota obviously started up front as the 9. Only played 65 minutes, though, before getting substituted. Who would you say is the best second Liverpool attacker? Or can we not just say that at the moment? Because there are so many options that can play in those forward positions.
That's the issue because none of them are safe for minutes. Jota was my standout pick away from Salah if you wanted somebody in the Liverpool attack. But yeah, he was really isolated and just didn't really have a good game against Chelsea. But then Diaz looks quite explosive. He got himself in some really good opportunities to score, but just didn't manage to finish either. So I don't know. It's kind of like a heads or tails between Jota and Diaz at the moment. So you can go either way.
Yeah, and obviously Darwin Núñez came on. I thought he looked quite bright, to be fair, given the amount of minutes that he had. He was decent in pre-season. Obviously got benched for the last 2. Do you think he could maybe break into the team right now, or do you think it's, again, just sort of a wait and see? And obviously they've got some tougher fixtures after that Bournemouth game as well. So what do you think about Darwin?
I really like Darwin whenever he plays. He always has so many chances, just can't really finish that well. But I don't think he's going to get a good really run in at the start of the season just because of all their attacking options. And Jota, still, we know he's also reliable. Whenever he plays, he does perform and get goals and assists. And I got a feeling whenever Liverpool do sign a midfielder, I think Gakpo and Jota are going to be the ones competing, and then Darwin will be like the second or third place competing with either Gakpo, between him and Gakpo to replace Jota up front. That's just my opinion. So yeah, I would stick with Jota. I wouldn't really consider Darwin.
Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of forwards now. Obviously, João Pedro, a lot of managers own. He's obviously scored a penalty, started the season pretty well for Brighton. At 5.5 million, that is a difficult price point to move around. There's not a lot of players at that price, especially in the forward category, that we're going to want in our FPL team. So we've got 2 guys coming up who could potentially fill that void when Brighton's fixtures turn a bit sour come after game week 3. First up, we've got Yohan Wissa. Obviously, scored against Tottenham in the first game of the season, playing up front with Mbeumo in that system, that sort of 5-3-2 that they tend to deploy against the top 6 in inverted commas. So yeah, what do you think about his performance in that sort of game? And do you think he's maybe one of these players that we can hop off from João Pedro onto after the fixtures turn back?
Yeah, definitely. He was quite impressive as well in the first game of the season. And like you said, he scored a goal. And with Brentford are also a really attacking team. They're quite similar to Brighton in a way. Maybe not as attacking as Brighton, but they most of the time just are like very gung-ho going forward. And there was a lot... maybe it's because Spurs are still trying to figure out their defence, but there was a lot of space in that game. So if Brentford carry on making the space and stuff, this is definitely going to be another really good cheaper option striker, and he could be an insane differential because his ownership's so low.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And also, there's something to bear in mind, though, with Yohan Wissa is that Kevin Schade, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he's obviously on the bench as well, looking to come into the first team. I think he scored a hat-trick in a pre-season, or in a mid-season friendly behind closed doors, like the day after they played. So I think he will come into our thinking potentially this season. He looked really lively. The only reason he didn't really play last season was because he's injured. So there might be slight rotation there, but I think for the time being, Vissa will be first choice. Obviously, 70 minutes there. It's enough minutes, especially against those three opponents there. Obviously, looking forward from game week 4, probably where you'd bring him in. Bournemouth at home, decent fixture. See, Newcastle away is tough, but then Everton away. So if you can sort of rotate him around your team, maybe you've got a 4.5 defender that you fancy playing over him 1 week, I think that'll be an interesting pick to go for. Moving forward, though, Eddie Nketiah obviously scored for Arsenal, 5.5 million. Again, another sort of minutes risk kind of player now that Arsenal have built into that squad with those attacking options. As an Arsenal fan yourself, do you think he is someone that we could look for until Jesus is injured? Do you think he'll play more consistently ahead of the likes of Havertz and Trossard, or do you think he's still a minutes risk?
He's still a minutes risk, but out of the three, he is going to be the one that plays. If you saw the last pre-season game we played, he actually got the captain's armband for it. So Arteta does have confidence in him. I personally think he needs to drop Havertz because he just hasn't convinced me enough. And it should be out of Trossard and Nketiah. The only reason I feel like Havertz or Nketiah did play in that game, well, both of them played in that game, is because we dropped Gabriel. Because if we did play Gabriel, then I think obviously Partey wouldn't have dropped back initially. And then one of them would have had to get taken out of the team. But because he scored, he's got the confidence going into it. I think he's going to be the starting man until Jesus comes back 100%.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely like the way he plays. He just seems to just get a lot of chances, or he's in and amongst it. Like he's always in the box getting chances. Would you consider the move of going like from João Pedro to him maybe this week or next week, or would you sort of hold off for now? Do you think João Pedro is a safe enough asset to sort of stick with?
I think he is. I wouldn't risk Nketiah just because we have three options with him, Havertz and Trossard, who can play there, and you just never know with our attack. And obviously, João Pedro being on penalties helps a lot because you can easily get points just by getting a penalty. He doesn't really have to do anything else in the game. Whereas obviously Eddie is not on any set pieces or anything for us. So I think it'll be a lot more difficult for Eddie to get fixtures just in open play because of the João Pedro penalty situation.
So that wraps up our transfer targets for the first game week. Let us know who you thought was a good little asset in game week 1, who impressed you to bring in game week 2 and beyond. Our advice, well, my advice anyway, would be to probably save your transfer if you can this game week. It makes you much more flexible going into game week 3. We obviously have more data to consume and more games to consume as well. What's your thoughts on that in terms of transfer advice at the moment?
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I'm most likely going to be rolling the transfer too. But the only way I will make a transfer is if we find out that Gabriel's very likely for a price drop. I just don't want to lose a 0.1, even though I still want him in my team. So I'll probably make the move to Rico Henry or someone if that is the case. But if he doesn't change in price, then yeah, definitely I'll be rolling the transfer to game week 2.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where if you've got like a fire to put out, maybe I think Tyrone Mings is someone who, if you haven't really got any rotational pieces on the bench, I'd definitely try and get rid of him. He's quite high owned. He's obviously out for a long period of time. We know that De Bruyne has already dropped as well. Yeah. So a few of these like sort of injured, maybe unavailable, high owned players, I'd maybe look to ship on if you can and if you must, but try and stay flexible into game week 3. On Gabriel, do you think he will play a part? Obviously, you're an Arsenal fan, you probably know more than most. Do you think he'll play a part in your game, or do you think Arteta is trying to squeeze him out? Obviously, Timber's now injured for a long time, and he's the obvious sort of replacement in that position, or do you think someone else can sort of come in?
No, I definitely think Gabriel's going to be still a secure player for our defence. He signed a new contract in October. Regardless of the Saudi rumours, he played, I think, 76 out of 77 games in a row for us, something crazy like that. And him and Saliba formed a solid foundation now. So I think it was a massive overreaction with Gabriel getting benched. People saying that he's not going to start for us and stuff like that, and talking about low block teams and stuff. He 100% is still going to be one of our main centre-backs. Yeah, for sure.
There you go. You heard it here first. No need to worry. Everyone can relax. Gabriel should hopefully start come game week 2 for Arsenal. Thanks very much for joining us, mate. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you on the socials and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, FPL Akshay everywhere on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. Had a really good time.
No worries, mate. Creating some really, really good content. Thanks for coming on as well. You've done a good replacement for Ben. Probably better than Ben, but don't tell him that. Awesome. Thank you very much for everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the FPL Graduates if you haven't already, and let us know who your transfer targets are for Game Week 2 and beyond, and we'll see you later.